Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Django Unchained, Hateful Eight. We all know these movies because they're Quentin Tarantino films. They are arguably some of the more violent films that have come out in Hollywood in the recent decades. Some of the more violent ones. However, I think there is some debate about which one is probably his greatest accomplishment. Some might say Reservoir Dogs because it's the greatest independent film of all time. There's Pulp Fiction, always the go-to. But I think sometimes Kill Bill gets overlooked. Technically, depending on your view, it's two movies. Kill Bill Volume 1 coming out in 2003, and then Volume 2 coming out in 2004. However, this is considered like his biggest movie, mainly because it's split into two films released in 2 different years. But for some reason, I don't think this movie gets talked enough. So, in this movie face-off, we're putting Volume 1 against Volume 2. So let's begin. First round, story. The story of Volume 1 is that after a wedding that went south fast, the bride, played by Uma Thurman, is now on a revenge spree against the members of her assassin group, mercenary group. They never quite specify, but they're basically the same thing. Where she kills against all the people that were against her main target being the leader, Bill, hence the term Kill Bill. In the Volume 1, it mainly focuses on her killing 2 of the main people, and then Volume 2 focuses on killing 3 of them, 2 of them being just more like regular members, and then the third one obviously being Bill himself. Now, while the second volume obviously has the big Kill Bill moment, Volume 1 is probably the most talked about out of the 2 volumes, mainly because it's somehow the easiest plot story to digest. Because in the second volume, it adds some more background stuff that might seem a little bit more complicated, a little more stuffed. So with convenience and easy sake, for being more simple, let's go with Volume 1 for the better story. Now let's go on to Volume 2, Cast. The cast is roughly what we'd expect. You've got the bride, who of course is pretty much the same in both volumes. Then in each of the 2 volumes you have 2 of the Viper member people. I think that's the name of the group. The Viper Gang? Something like that. It's snake related, I know that. In the first volume, the 2 she takes down, it's kind of weird. There's the member that she kills right away, pretty much no background whatsoever. Well, virtually none. And then it focuses the entire time focusing on the other member. And then Volume 2, it's more or less split between the 2, then Bill at the end. Speaking of Bill, Volume 2 actually has Bill. Yeah, Volume 1 has him, speaking lines of dialogue. But Volume 2 is where we actually see Bill. So for that sake, I'm going with Volume 2 for cast. Now let's move on to 3. Action. Now, any Tarantino film is going to be known for its action, its violence, and the blood. I mean, we just have to look at Inglourious Basterds, or Pulp Fiction, or Reservoir Dogs, or Django Unchained, or Hateful Eight. God, there is a lot of violence in these movies. Volume 1 obviously has a lot of action, but that's not to take any good merits away from Volume 2. Yes, there are some action sequences in Volume 2 that are told in flashback, but it doesn't mean that they're not any more entertaining. Plus, she breaks her way through a coffin in the ground. That's kind of badass. However, Volume 1 is basically this build up of this one giant action sequence, and plus there's some other action throughout the movie as well, including basically in the very beginning. I mean, yeah, the Tarantino films are all kind of violent, but out of the 2 volumes, the first one definitely has the most of the 2 Kill Bills. So, Volume 1 gets this round. Round 4, Climax. Now, Climax does include action, but it's a little bit more than that. Any good film that has a good climax, yes, there's can be some action, but it's really more about resolution, getting closure on things, and just finally having the moment that the film's all been building up to. With Volume 1, the entire movie's basically a big build up for this big, huge ass action sequence that results in the death of one of the Viper members. The climax of Volume 2 is obviously the meeting with Bill, and of course his subsequent death. And also some resolution on why she was turned on against, what all of this really meant, and just their relationship throughout the years. And since that obviously has much more of an emotional value to it, I'm going to have to give this one to Volume 2. Now let's go on to the final round. Tone of the film. Now, obviously, Volume 1 definitely has more focus on the action, the blood, the just pure adrenaline, which is to be expected. I mean, like I said, the thing that's most known about Kill Bill Volume 1 is the big-ass action sequence at the end, her going up against all of these like Yakuza and other Japanese criminals and one of the Viper members. Volume 2's tone is different. I mean, yes, action, of course, but there's more conflict on a more emotional and personal relationship level. I mean, in Volume 2, spoiler alert, she has a daughter. That's revealed, that's a surprise even to the bride, Uma Thurman's character. It's got this much more emotional level and this complexity to it that really alters the mood and atmosphere of Volume 2. And I have to give it some credit for that. I mean, we all love Tarantino films for their violence, but when you can also add something to it to make it more worth it, that's a little bit impressive. So, Volume 2. So, winning the round and the face-off, Kill Bill Volume 2. Now, some people obviously consider the 2 volumes just one big film. And to be fair, it can be argued that this is probably Quentin Tarantino's biggest accomplishment. I mean, yes, we all have our favorites with Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction, but I think the Kill Bill films have a special place in Tarantino's heart at filmography and history. For all the good and, of course, all the bad that's been popping up in interviews and such in recent weeks. So, that's it for this movie face-off. Comment down below. What's your favorite Tarantino film? Like, subscribe, share. Dr. Cinema. See you next time.